Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're wading into some pretty charged territory,
Definitely. We're talking about the reparations debate in the U.S.
but with a very specific focus.
Right. This isn't about whether reparations should happen or, the logistics.
No, instead, we're looking at one particular source, a pretty fiery commentary, actually.
Yeah, and it concentrates entirely on the arguments against reparations.
Specifically, it digs into the motives the source assigns to critics, especially Black critics.
Exactly. This source comes from, well, a highly charged online discussion.
A YouTube video commentary from Prof BlackTruth, I believe.
That's the one. And it makes a bold claim.
Which is
that opposition, particularly from Black individuals, isn't really about ideology or policy concerns.
okay, so what is it about, according to this source?
It claims it reveals something deeper, maybe about seeking white comfort or a certain status within the current system.
Okay, let's unpack this. What's the core provocative claim this source material makes about the debate? How does it frame it?
Well, it kicks off with this central concept, reparations as a political truth serum.
A truth serum. Okay, what does that mean in this context?
The idea is that the demand for reparations acts like this unavoidable litmus test.
Also.
Because, the source argues, it's such a direct challenge to the racial status quo.
So direct that there's no wiggle room.
Exactly. The source says there's no middle road. You're either for it, meaning you're challenging the structure, or you're against it, which in their view means you're complicit in upholding that structure. It supposedly separates the real from the phony.
Phony in terms of commitment to Black empowerment.
That's the implication. Real commitment versus, well, something else.
Okay, that's a strong start. So why reparations? Why is this demand seen as uniquely dangerous by the source? People talk about race all the time.
Yeah, and the source addresses that. It argues that historically discussions about race, even back in Dr. King's era, were sort of tolerable.
Tolerable as long as they stuck to certain things.
Right, as long as it was about desegregating lunch counters, movie theaters, schools, access.
Access, yes, but not fundamentally shifting the economic balance.
Precisely. That was the line. But the moment the demand shifts from just access to reallocating billions of dollars,
To address historical harm and theft.
that's when it becomes inescapable, according to the source, truly threatening to what it calls white supremacy.
So the threat isn't just talking about race.
No, the source is clear.
Huh?
The threat is the demand for money, the reallocation of resources.
And what's interesting is the source argues the problem isn't really the amount of money.
Not at all. It actually spends quite a bit of time on this point.
How so?
It points out that, corporations, agricultural lobbies, other groups, they demand and get billions all the time.
Subsidies, bailouts.
Huge sums, often way bigger than proposed reparations packages.
Yeah.
And yet the source claims you don't hear the same level of moral outrage or claims that it's fiscally impossible.
So the government can allocate billions. That's not the issue.
The mechanism is there, the source says. The only problem, and this is a direct quote they emphasize, is that Black people are the ones asking for the compensation this time.
It boils down to who is asking.
That's the core argument. It's about perceived hierarchy, about who is considered legitimate in making such demands on the state.
And the source uses an analogy to drive this home, right? Something more recent.
Yes, the defund the police analogy. It's pretty pointed.
Okay, let's talk about that. That definitely hit a nerve in recent politics.
It did. The source highlights that when Black activists proposed defund the police, which was basically a call to stop spending money in one area and maybe reallocate it.
It was immediately framed as radical, dangerous, completely absurd by many.
Across the board, yeah. Impossible, unrealistic.
But the men.
But then, the source points out, when parts of the white right, as they put it, felt threatened by the FBI.
Thinking about investigations related to the Orange Man, as the source puts it.
Exactly. Suddenly, they started demanding the FBI be defunded.
And suddenly, cutting a federal law enforcement budget wasn't so crazy.
Suddenly, it was not only acceptable, but for them, desirable, because they were the ones demanding it to protect their interests.
Wow. So that comparison really anchors the source's idea that it's about race.
Yes, that anti-Black racism is foundational, and any demand that actually shifts resources to Black people or fundamentally challenges that structure is what triggers this massive opposition.
It implies the system can handle talk, but not action that has a real financial cost to the existing power structure.
That seems to be the core assertion.
Which leads us right into the next part. how the source tries to dismantle the arguments against reparations.
Right. And it starts with a really interesting observation
What's that?
that most critics, they don't actually dare to say Black people aren't owed reparations.
They don't challenge the underlying debt.
Rarely the moral or historical debt itself, the source claims. Instead, their objections immediately pivot to one of two main talking points, usually logistical or sort of philosophical objections.
Okay, let's take the first one. This one feels particularly loaded. The idea that Black people would just waste the money.
Yeah, and the source uses this really sharp legal analogy to dismiss it.
Okay.
It asks, basically, have you ever heard a defense lawyer in a civil case stand up and say, yeah, my client messed up, they owe the plaintiff money, but, Your Honor, don't make them pay because the plaintiff's just going to blow it.
Right, that would be laughed out of court. Liability is liability.
Exactly. Compensation isn't charity, it's fulfilling an obligation. What the recipient might do with the money is totally irrelevant to whether the debt is owed.
That's a powerful point.
Yeah.
And the source adds another layer to this.
It does. It claims this specific worry about recipients wasting money was never brought up, or at least not centrally, when Japanese Americans got reparations for internment.
Or Native Americans for treaty violations and land theft. The source mentions Red Indians.
Right. The source argues that questioning the recipient's financial responsibility only seems to surface when it's Black Americans making the claim.
Okay, so that's talking point one, dismantled by the source. What's the second one?
This is the one the source claims is the only real reason any Black person opposes reparations. It's unrealistic. It'll never happen.
Ah, the feasibility argument.
Exactly. And this is where the source brings in cognitive dissonance.
Explain that. How does the source see cognitive dissonance playing out here?
The logic, as the source lays it out, goes like this. Someone might think, yes, reparations are absolutely owed morally, historically, but I just don't think white people or the establishment will ever actually agree to it. It's not politically possible.
So therefore?
So therefore, I oppose demanding it. The opposition isn't based on the justice of the claim, but on predicting its failure based on likely opposition from the dominant group.
So the source sees this as giving up on a principle to avoid the discomfort of fighting a hard battle.
Pretty much. Sacrificing the moral belief it's owed because the social environment it won't be allowed makes holding on to that belief uncomfortable or seem pointless. It's framed as choosing comfort over conviction.
And the source really critiques this unrealistic standard, right? Says it's applied selectively.
Heavily. It points out that these same critics might champion other causes that face huge obstacles.
Like what? Does it give examples?
It mentions, for instance, the political difficulty of, say, cutting off U.S. aid to Israel, given the powerful lobby involved.
Implying that critics will stand on principle for some tough issues.
That's the argument. That for other issues, maybe ones backed by a powerful groups or part of their own specific agenda, critics will fight regardless of the odds or public opinion.
But not for reparations.
The source claims it's only when the demand benefits Black people specifically that this asinine standard, as they call it, of realistic versus unrealistic gets trotted out.
A standard based on what everyone else thinks.
Exactly. So the feasibility argument becomes, in the source's view, a tool used specifically to shut down Black demands.
Which reframes that whole unrealistic excuse as potentially a cover for something else.
Precisely. And that leads directly into the source's most, let's say, explosive section.
The true motivation part.
Yes. Connecting that focus on unrealistic directly to the motive it assigns these critics.
Which is?
Seeking a comfortable place under white supremacy. Basically prioritizing their own individual standing or comfort within the existing system.
Over pushing for collective change that might rock the boat.
That's the assertion. That they value personal acceptance by the dominant group more than they value making the hard, necessary demands for the collective.
Now, we have to acknowledge the language the source uses here is strong.
Extremely strong. It's definitely not holding back. It calls critics cowardly, scared, and conniving scumbags.
Okay, wow. That's clearly not academic detachment. It's an attack.
It is. The goal seems to be to completely delegitimize their motives. It claims they're trying to suck up to a non-Black audience.
And there was that phrase, finesse a bag. What does the source mean by that?
Yeah, in this context, finesse a bag means basically maneuvering to get personal gain, often financial. By positioning themselves as acceptable, non-threatening, palatable to a mainstream or white audience. The source mentions them often being half-brain financial gurus or some sort of life coach.
Implying they build a brand that depends on not being too radical.
Exactly. That they use pathetic respectability politics.
Which means adopting certain mainstream behaviors to gain acceptance, sometimes downplaying more confrontational Black issues.
Right. The source implies that demanding reparations would alienate their would-be customers or their base, threatening their personal platform, their bag.
So personal profit or status over collective justice, in the source's view.
That's the harsh assessment, yes.
But the source doesn't just attack. It offers a challenge, doesn't it?
It does. It challenges these critics. If you oppose reparations because it's unrealistic or for whatever reason, fine, but then propose something else.
Something equally bold.
Equally bold, equally game-changing, and specifically pro-Black. Something that would fundamentally change things.
And the source claims they usually can't.
It says they typically fail this challenge, or they just offer up stale canned talking points from the DNC or RNC playbooks.
Nothing that actually threatens the status quo of racial inequality.
Nothing that disrupts the structures that, the source argues, maintain Black poverty and lack of resources.
This all loops back to that feasibility point again.
It does. The source brings up other groups, Jewish groups pursuing Holocaust claims decades later, LGBTQ plus activism, immigrant rights movements.
Saying they make huge demands.
Huge demands, and they keep pushing, regardless of who likes it or who says it's impossible.
While Black demands are uniquely labeled unrealistic.
That's the pattern the source identifies, calling it a control mechanism to manage expectations downwards.
And it uses historical examples.
Yeah, comparing it to the past, saying people claimed ending child slavery was unrealistic. Crushing Jim Crow was unrealistic.
Until it happened.
Right up until the moment it happened. So unrealistic is just a temporary label for things the powerful don't want to do yet.
So pulling this all together, what's the source's final conclusion? What does opposing reparations signify, in their view?
Fundamentally, the source concludes that opposing reparations means opposing Black empowerment. Full stop.
And therefore, strengthening the forces that want to maintain the current racial hierarchy.
Yes. Protecting white power, as the source puts it, rather than challenging it. And they reiterate, reparations are not unrealistic.
Because other groups got them.
Got them for harms the source explicitly states were nowhere near as severe as centuries of slavery and its aftermath.
It's a really focused argument, shifting the lens from policy details onto the critics themselves.
Absolutely. It frames the debate around personal integrity, courage, and motive, rather than just dollars and cents or logistical hurdles. Critics are painted as self-interested, maybe even scared.
So the central thesis we've unpacked from this source. For some, opposing reparations isn't about a genuine disagreement on the debt.
No, it's seen as a fear-based move, a way to secure comfort and status within the existing system, avoiding the necessary fight.
And the source leaves us with a thought on strategy.
Yeah, it's a really critical one, I think. It says, you cannot change a deeply entrenched system with modest proposals and half measures.
How do you change it then?
You do it through bold actions, game-changing actions. That's the direct quote.
That's a powerful perspective from the material we analyzed today. It certainly gives you, the listener, something to think about.
Definitely.
And it leaves us with this final provocative question to chew on. If other groups stand on principle, pushing demands, regardless of whether people call them unrealistic, what's the real cost, morally, not just financially, of demanding less than what you believe is owed simply because you fear the reaction?
What happens when that sense of principle gets traded away for what seems like realism in the moment?
Something to consider. That's all for this deep dive.